Here is something worth thinking about. Imagine a doctor with a patient. The tests are done, the reports are back. The doctor now knows what is wrong, and knowing is not the same as prescribing. Because before recommending a treatment, there is another layer of work. Knowing who this patient is. What can they realistically follow? What are the risks of each option, and how certain does the doctor need to be before recommending something that cannot be undone? Data work has exactly the same structure. You finished Unit 5.1 with 3 insight statements. You know what the evidence suggests, but knowing is not recommending. The gap between those two things is the translation problem, and that is what the unit is about. Every strong recommendation in any field needs 3 things: what, why, for whom. First, what is the specific action being recommended? Not a direction, not a theme, an action. Strengthen health system is not a what. Invest in referral tracking systems that connect community health workers to district level facilities is a what. Specific enough that someone can begin planning it. Second, why this recommendation? It is to be based on the evidence, not on all your findings. One should look at the one finding that most directly supports this particular action. A recommendation is not stronger because it cites more evidence. It is stronger because it cites the right evidence precisely. And third, for whom? The decision maker. Yet the element most analysts underestimate. The same insight sounds very different depending on who needs to act on it. For a journalist, a public health practitioner, and a policy analyst, it needs to be translated differently. Each of them has different authority, different constraints, and a different standard of evidence. Let us bring this back to the countries from the previous unit. 3 insights from Unit 5.1: Bangladesh, India, and Vietnam. Each one ends with a version of the same observation. The gap is at the accountability interface, the handoff between a community health worker and a facility, not at the point of first contact. So the what for this case becomes invest in the accountability systems that make that handoff work, and not more on the community health workers, the system that connects them to facilities. The why draws from 2 places: the health expenditure figures from the dashboard and the accountability dimension of the responsiveness scores from Unit 5.1, consistently the weakest across all 3 countries, even where accessibility is strong. And then comes the final layer. For whom is this recommendation for? A news readership, an international health organization, and regional policymakers. Each needs a different translation of the same recommendation that we will see as we move ahead. Now notice how the same insight changes shape across different fields and becomes something quite different in each of them. In journalism, it becomes an investigation. The evidence leads the reader to a conclusion. The recommendation is sometimes explicit, sometimes implied. The evidence standard is credibility. Would a reader who did not do the analysis find this convincing? In public health, it becomes a programmed decision. The recommendation is explicit and operational. Someone needs to justify the cost of a new initiative. The evidence standard is there enough here to justify budget allocation. In policy, it becomes one option among many. Something that must come with a risk assessment attached. The evidence standard is, can this survive political scrutiny? Same insight, 3 fields, 3 very different outputs. In our case, Dia, our journalist, is writing all 3 audiences at once, which makes the translation task harder and more interesting. The table in the learning sequence shows exactly how the outputs differ. 3 things to watch for that break, a recommendation. First, the causal leap. The evidence shows a correlation between weak accountability and high maternal mortality. The recommendation says fix accountability and mortality will fall. But we have not established the causal link. The recommendation is running ahead of the evidence. Unit 5.3 checks this specifically. Second, writing for yourself. The recommendation makes sense to you because you did the analysis. Does it make sense to someone who did not? The test, hand it to a colleague. Ask them what they would do differently after reading it. If the answer is, I am not sure, the recommendation needs work. Third, vagueness. Strengthen the referral system is not a recommendation. Introduce referral tracking with named accountability at the district level is. The difference is that someone could begin planning the second one. In video 2, we take the Bangladesh insight and turn it into a short decision memo. One insight, 5 parts, 3 minutes. Each part of the memo connects to something you have already done. The decision question draws on your insight statement. The recommendation draws on your what. The evidence base is drawn on your why. The trade-off is where you are honest about what you cannot yet claim. Download the memo template before pressing play on video 2. The link is just below this video.